We are using an imprecise method, getting an imprecise readout based on imprecise data that we were never meant to have to begin with, because the data that is supplied into the ammo chart and all of the effects contained therein were never supposed to be something that we saw that the devs merely allowed us to continue to use. That also means we are not likely to get an answer from BSG about it. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, while I'm waiting right now for Escape from Tarkov to download on this stream rig so that I can simultaneously log in with a couple of different accounts to do some testing, the reason why I am looking into something is because of someone by the name of CR Stali, or it's Cristali, something like that. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but he created this YouTube video that went into what was, I guess, apparently going on with fragmentation potentially being bugged. He stopped into my chat, I believe yesterday, and said something to the effect of fragmentation is broken and doesn't do 1.5x damage anymore. It does more than that. And of course, I naturally responded with bullshit. I don't think that that's the case. That doesn't make any sense. Where's the proof? To be fair, I think I probably came off a little bit more harsh than I wanted to. Really makes you scratch your head, because that seems like it would have been a bug that all of us would have seen by now, right? We would have all cried sus, and maybe some people have. Now, there have been some issues with fragmentation damage in the past. There's also been some issues with limb damage in the past. And even most recently, Veritas did a video in which it was discovered that bullets will only currently fragment, and we don't know whether or not this is intentional, when you hit the limbs, and only when you hit the limbs. And for those of you that don't know, fragmentation is basically like a critical hit. Instead of a round hitting for 1x damage, it hits for 50% more on top of the base damage. So something that has a base damage of 53, like M855 for the 5.56 M4 platform, instead would hit for 79.5, which is 1.5 damage. Now what Cristali, again, sorry if I'm butchering your name, Cristali was seeing some interesting numbers. He was seeing things that were different than just the normal 1.5x hit, which led him to the conclusion that fragmentation is causing way more damage than it's supposed to. However, there were some variables in his video that I thought didn't make a lot of sense and weren't controlled enough, I guess, to my satisfaction. Be that as it may, I think that he was on to something, which is something that I want to test myself, just to show you guys what I'm looking at. Hello, everyone. Editor Onepeg here. I know, I'm wearing a different shirt. I got my hair did nice. I took a shower. It's a different day. Apparently, we can edit videos across multiple days, which is interesting. But I want to do a TLDR for you so that way you guys don't have to sit through this if you don't want to. Here's the basic premise. Fragmentation chance is not being represented accurately on the ammo chart at all. We couldn't get anything close to what the representative numbers on the ammo chart are saying the fragmentation chance is for all of these high pen rounds. None of them made sense. Secondly, the amount of damage that is being done to our PMC when it gets hit when a round fragments is significantly more than 1.5x. Way more. And we don't know why. Because if we do it on a blackened limb and it doesn't fragment, it hits for the right amount of damage. It hits for whatever is advertised on the chart. If it hits for a fragment, it does way more damage than it's supposed to. And I can't isolate it away from a blackened limb. There's a separate issue with how the UI displays all of this information to us, which I'm also going to go into detail over because there's a bigger problem. None of this makes sense. On the install for Tarkov, it appears that the thing was going to be unpacking files for like an hour, and I don't have that kind of time. We got things to do. So instead, I've conscripted my man Saint. Saint, say hi.
Hello.
And we're gonna give him this here gun, and he's gonna shoot me in the leg, and we're gonna test stuff. Throughout the course of the testing that we did, we tested a whole bunch of different rounds. First, we started off with 8.55 ball ammo because that's what the original reference video tried using. And while he was able to get a fragment, we weren't. We shot through, I think, 90 rounds, and we weren't able to get the 28 penetration round when shot into a leg to fragment even once. So from here, we decided that we would instead use 8.55A1. All the while, we were shooting once into the leg, healing the leg up until eventually we saw a fragment. Okay, that's 0. There's a fragment right there. We just got one. In each one of the 8.55A1 tests, when the round fragmented, if we were to go by the health amount that was being shown below the character in the character screen, it appeared that it was doing 88 damage. 88 damage is equivalent to 1.8 times damage, not 1.5 times damage. However, later on, when we went back and looked at the footage between the head, torso, stomach, remaining arms, and the one remaining leg, the amount of HP that was missing was 91. Massive discrepancy already of 3 damage between the amount of HP being shown on the character screen and the amount of HP being shown on each of the bars. There was their first issue. Automatically, we figure we're on to something. Now remember, the limb got blackened out by the round that fragmented, which makes us think, okay, well, what if we had a round that fragmented, and it fragmented for 1.8x damage, but it was less than, say, your leg's limb HP? What then? The only round that we could find that had high enough penetration that would maybe reliably do that was 4.6 ammo APSX. APSX is advertised to have a fragmentation chance of about 10%. Unfortunately, after 100+ rounds of APSX, we couldn't get it to fragment even once. With a 10% chance, with over 100 rounds fired, statistically speaking, it is extremely unlikely to not see a single solitary fragment. So perhaps there was something wrong with the ammo? Then we went to BS and then BT, both of which have a 10 and then slightly higher rate of fragmentation than the other, neither of which could we get to fragment at all. So now we're on to another issue. Are these low rate of fragmentation rounds with high penetration chance actually fragmenting? We don't know. Maybe the ammo's bugged? More testing? Even more confusion? So from here, then we say, okay, well, we'll try a 5.7 round. We go to SS190. We finally pull a round off of that one that fragments, even though we only really got one fragmentation round out of 75 rounds that we fired of SS190. We finally got one, only one, which again begs the question, maybe our sample size wasn't large enough, or the fragmentation rate is seriously off on the ammo chart. Okay, so to summarize, whenever there's a fragment and it seems as though there's some other issue with fragmentation rates, either the info that's being fed to the ammo charts are wrong, the info that is being supplied by BSG through their API to be fed into the ammo charts is wrong, or BSG is not accurately depicting whatever the actual fragmentation rates of those ammos are. We went through and shot almost 100 rounds of every one of the different ammo types that we tested between 5.45BT, 5.45BS, SS190, and the only one that was reliably fragmenting at a rate that was being shown is 8.55A1. All of the other rounds that we tested weren't fragmenting. FMJSX, we couldn't get to fragment even though it was listed at 20% fragmentation chance. APSX, we could not get to fragment. That is crazily different than what is being shown on the ammo chart. Obviously, we could go in and we could make it 1,000 rounds per test and do it very slowly, and perhaps the time frame that we gave it wasn't adequate enough. I don't know, but to try and test something like this, it should be relatively close. The other aspect of this that seems like it's way off is that the amount of damage that is being radiated through the body, whenever something fragmented, it did 1.8 times the amount of damage that was shown on the sheet. Reliably so, 1.8 times damage when hitting a leg. If it didn't fragment, even if it just hit normal radiating damage, it did the right amount of damage listed on the chart. It's only 1.8x when it fragments. So the radiating damage is fine. The fragmentation damage is the thing that we're calling into question. Unfortunately, the only round that does a low enough amount of damage to be within 65 HP if it were to fragment, with a penetration chance high enough to make it fragment, was APSX. Otherwise, any other round, if it did 1.8x fragmentation damage, which is what it looks like it's doing for the ones that we could get to fragment, are radiating at a 1.8x rate. It could possibly be, and I am very much speculating here, it could possibly be that the 1.5x is being calculated per normal, and then extra radiating damage is being placed on top of it, as if it's counting the base amount of damage being done by the bullet a second time or something, and radiating that amount of damage throughout the player at a lower rate for whatever reason. It's almost impossible to get those numbers to line up as whole numbers. They then get divvied up into decimal points of several points deep. When that happens, the game then rounds. Some of them are rounded up, and other ones are rounded down. which means that the HP bars that are showing in each one of the regions of the body are not going to be accurately representative of the whole. It also means that the amount of total hit points remaining is also not going to be representative of the whole, which means we have no effing clue whether or not the amount of HP that is being read out to us remaining in any body part or in a total are accurate after you get hit. We haven't got a clue. It could be right, or it could be off by several numbers. So there's also the possibility that the amount of radiating damage that is being shown to us, albeit an awful lot more than it should be, is just some type of numerical error. But again, we don't know, because we are basing all of our testing information and the readouts that we are getting on a flawed UI that is not indicative of what is actually going on, because we don't have access to the actual numbers from the actual game code. We are using an imprecise method, getting an imprecise readout based on imprecise data that we were never meant to have to begin with, because the data that is supplied into the ammo chart and all of the effects contained therein were never supposed to be something that we saw that the devs merely allowed us to continue to use. That also means we are not likely to get an answer from BSG about it. But, if I may, there does seem to be some type of a discrepancy between what is being shown on the ammo chart as fragmentation chance and what is actually being seen in-game as fragmentation chance realized. There also seems to be a little bit of a discrepancy in our level of understanding with the amount of radiating damage that occurs when a fragment hits a limb, because the only way that a fragment happens is when it hits a limb. Is it 1.5? Is it 1.8? Is it then being modified because it's a blackened limb or not? These are questions that we need to ask of the devs, and hopefully they will clarify it for us. I don't know if they actually will, but it's just another part of Tarkov that seems like it's confusing and potentially buggy. But that's what I have for this video, guys. Thank you so much for coming and checking it out. Please do me a solid and consider subbing the channel if you're not already a sub. Please follow me on my socials at OnePegMG on Twitter, at OnePeg on TikTok, and please consider giving me a follow over on my Twitch channel, where I am live every day between 6 and 7 a.m. Eastern until whenever at twitch.tv/OnePeg. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon. Peace.